Happening now, voting in Chautauqua County is looking a little different than years past with new safety precautions in place due to COVID-19. The details next. Plus, the director of the Fenton History Center joins us live to talk about the effects of COVID-19 as well as the new social change we're seeing in our area.
And it's another wet afternoon with showers and thunderstorms moving across the area. Some of them, once again, could be a bit on the stronger side. I've got the full forecast next. The news at noon starts now.
Live and on demand, this is WNY News Now.
And thanks for joining us for WNY News Now. I'm Justin Gould. Voting in Chautauqua County is looking different than years past with new safety precautions due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Democratic Commissioner of Elections Norm Green tells WNY News Now all poll sites across the county are open until 9 o'clock tonight. Green says there are several new precautions in place because of COVID-19.
We expect everybody to come in and to clean their hands. The hand sanitizers by the door. We expect them to have a face covering. If they don't have one, we have one available to give them for them to keep. And then we ask them to come in, do their voting business, and then move out so that we keep our places safe and free of the virus as possible.
Green says in-person voting turnout is low, mainly because many have already voted via absentee ballot. He says there is no occupant limit at the polling sites. However, they are asking voters to remain 6 feet apart. Now in Chautauqua County, more than 28,000 absentee ballots were sent out to voters for the Democratic presidential primary, Bustye Town Council Republican primary, and the Libertarian Party primary. Early voting was also previously expanded with locations at the Board of Elections office in Mayville, Chautauqua County Fairgrounds in Dunkirk, and the Chautauqua Mall in Lakewood. Green says the final result of primary elections here will not be known until July 1, when absentee ballots are counted. He says Tuesday's primary is also serving as a good test for Board of Elections staff to prepare for November's general election. Well, a Jamestown man was issued an appearance ticket after Jamestown police say they spotted him allegedly discharging fireworks. 27-year-old Brandon Daly was charged with a city code violation after exploding those fireworks. Police report that they responded last night near Main and West 13th Streets. They say they allegedly saw Daly launch the fireworks into the sky, exploding above area houses. Daly is scheduled to appear in court at a later date. Now, if you remember, last week, Jamestown police reported a dramatic increase in fireworks usage here. According to the National Fireworks Protection Association, fireworks start an average of nearly 20,000 fires in 2018, including 1,900 structure fires, 500 vehicle fires, and more than 17,000 outdoor fires. Well, attorney Jason Schmidt has been endorsed by Chautauqua County's Republican and Conservative parties to seek election as the county's next district attorney. Schmidt is a state and federal trial attorney and former Chautauqua County felony prosecutor with an active criminal defense and litigation practice in Fredonia. He received the endorsements as the county began shutting down amid the coronavirus pandemic, effectively placing his run for DA on hold. The Republican Party previously challenged current district attorney Patrick Swanson, who was the acting DA back in 2016. Schmidt says he's available to answer questions from the public and can be reached by email. We have that link posted at WNYNewsNow.com. Well, the pandemic recently stopped the economy in its tracks, and now businesses across the nation are slowly starting to open back up. A new report suggests ways employers can do that safely. Our Mandy Gaithner with more in today's Consumer Watch.
With millions still unemployed and others still waiting to get back to work, a report in the New England Journal of Medicine outlines what businesses can do to safely resume operations during the COVID-19 pandemic. Employees and customers are encouraged to do what's already been asked of everyone: wash hands frequently, wear masks, stay apart, and stay home if unwell. But the report also suggests employers may take disciplinary action against employees who don't abide by these guidelines. It also advises employers to offer or extend sick leave benefits to encourage workers to stay home when feeling sick. Businesses can also place partitions or barriers between workers or between employees and customers and improve ventilation and air circulation. Staggered work schedules can also help keep employees safer, as well as accommodations to workers at a higher risk of getting seriously ill from the virus, including the option to work from home. For today's Consumer Watch, I'm Mandy Gaither.
Mandy, thank you. Once there's an increase in virus testing capacity, the report says employers can also do contact tracing to help slow a potential spread in the workplace. Well, Audubon Community Nature Center is awarding cash prizes to winners of its 2020 Nature Photography Contest. Alec Shipherd, he's the judge of this year's contest, says that contestant categories leave the field wide open for whatever fanatics, people as whatever people want to take photos of in this contest. Cash prizes of $200 will be awarded to winners in both the youth and adult divisions of the categories of the wildlife contest, including portraits, macro abstracts, and habitats and landscapes. Audubon Community Nature Center will print those winning photographs in the exhibit in the Nature Center, and the winners will be named in a news release that's widely distributed, including to our media site. The 6 winning photographs and 12 finalists will include 6 youth and 6 adult, will be displayed indefinitely on the contest website with the photographer's name, city, state, and country. Now, the deadline for photo submissions is August 31st. For more, we have a link on WNYNewsNow.com. Well, we thank everyone for joining us here as we continue to bring facts over fear in our coverage of COVID-19 and pretty much the reopening process that we're in the heat of right now. Gotta say hello to Christina. Hopefully they're doing well. Great to see you on the broadcast. Good to see Lori, Joseph, James. Good to see David, Crystal, and Carol as well. Hopefully you're doing well, and we thank you so much for joining us today. Let's switch gears now and get a check of our First Defense weather forecast with Chief Forecaster Dakota Hunter. Hey, Dakota.
Hey, Jay, and happy Tuesday, everybody. And Justin, I have a question for you. Now, did you get a chance to make a dinner in your crack pot last night?
Oh, boy. I knew you weren't going to let this one go.
Nope.
No, we did not. We had tacos. No
okay.
Crack pot.
So,
for those of you who maybe don't know,
yeah.
Dakota thinks I said crack pot yesterday when we were talking about what we had over the weekend. But I promise I said crack pot. And I went back and listened, and I said crack pot, Mr. Hunter.
It was crack pot.
No,
Trust
I said
me.
crack pot.
All right. Anyway,
so
that's his story.
Because
yeah, that's his story, truth. And he's sticking to it. Speaking of my story, how about this? Now, we had a little break in the rain coverage yesterday afternoon before that second batch of rain came. So how about this? This is the Chattacoin River. This is basically on the North Main Street Bridge in Brooklyn Square, overlooking of course, Chattacoin River. How is that for you? That is fantastic. And of course, if you have any pictures or videos of the weather, of course, I took that, by the way. If you have any pictures of the video, if you have any pictures or video of the weather, you can send it to us on Twitter or Facebook. Of course, my Twitter page and the First Defense weather page. And also make sure you use the hashtag MyLocalWX, and that is how we will get them on the air. Here's a live look from downtown Jamestown. This is the camera that's on top of the Doubletree Hotel. And yeah, we have some rain falling downtown. 70 at the airport as of noon hour with a southwest wind of 14, but we have a wind gust of 20. Oh, there's that sticky, icky dew point of 67. So again, you're feeling the humidity once again out there. First Defense Doppler shows you the rain that is moving in basically from southwest today. So this is going to be all moving to the northeast today. So scattered showers right now, and then we're going to get into a chance for a few thunderstorms later this afternoon. Some of them could be a bit on the stronger side. 81 was the high yesterday, 64 this morning, 94 and 39 are the record highs and lows lows for this date at the Jamestown airport. So through the afternoon, showers and thunderstorms. There is a chance at least one or two of them in isolated nature could be strong to severe, much like yesterday, with mainly gusty winds and very heavy rain. Very warm and humid, 77 at the lakeshore, the 85 well inland with a south wind 10 to 20, some wind gusts 30 miles an hour. That's non-thunderstorm wind gusts. But we have a little brief window of cool down, and then we're right back to summer once again by the weekend. We'll talk about it a little later in the show. Justin?
All right, Dakota, thank you very much. Coming up next, the director of the Fenton History Center joins us live to reflect on the COVID-19 pandemic and now current call for change here in Jamestown. And later, details on this year's scholarships and awards for Jamestown Public School students. Stay with us as WNY News Now continues.
With coverage that matters. This is WNY News Now.
EagleZip.com is your local one-stop shop for all of your home and business computer needs. Located on Fluvanna Avenue Extension, just outside of Jamestown, EagleZip.com sells and services all brands of desktops and laptops, as well as servers and network equipment for your business. All new computer sales include transferring your data from your old computer plus a 2-year warranty. Call EagleZip.com today.
Stop by EagleZip.com today and let us make computers easy for you. When you're on the go, stay in the know by downloading the WNY News Now mobile app. Stay up to date on local news, weather, and sports that matter to you. Plus, subscribe to breaking news and weather alerts from the team that puts coverage first. In addition, watch news as it happens with the Southern Tier's only 24/7 streaming network. Download the WNY News Now app right now. It's free on the Apple App Store and Google Play Store.
You're watching WNY News Now, where coverage comes first.
And welcome back to WNY News Now. The past months have brought a lot of change here in Western New York, from a worldwide pandemic to now call for social change in society. This is all moving so very quickly. And joining us on the program to talk more about the historical significance of all of this is Noah Goodling. He's the director of the Fenton History Center here in Jamestown. Sir, it's great to have you on the show. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me, Justin. It's great to be here.
Well, let's start with the COVID-19 pandemic. It seems like overnight, really, the world changed. From a historical perspective, has Jamestown seen anything like this before?
You know, I think it's really interesting of course, what everybody wants to compare this to is the 1918 Spanish flu pandemic. And I think it's interesting to go back and look at some of the actual primary sources from that time. I found a newspaper article from 1919 that says, much was heard last winter of the use of face masks, though the use of suitably constructed masks will reduce the interchange of respiratory germs through inhalation. It must be remembered that there are many other paths by which such germs are transmitted from person to person. Soiled hands, common drinking cups, improperly cleaned eating and drinking utensils in restaurants, soda fountains, infected food. It goes on from here, but it's interesting to look back at something that is over 100 years old at this point and hear them talking about face masks, hear them talking about concerns with restaurants, hear them talking about these different ways that infection can be transmitted, and realize that this moment is not entirely unique, that there are historical precedents for this kind of thing. It's just that I think that when you look at the historical record, pandemics were more common before we had modern medicine. I think that's kind of an obvious thing. So you can look back, there were multiple influenza pandemics, there were smallpox pandemics, cholera pandemics, and as we've gotten modern sanitation and modern medicine, we've seen longer and longer gaps between when those pandemics occur. So people back then may have been more used to the idea of, okay, for a few months here, we're going to do certain things that are going to reduce transmission, but it's kind of a new experience for people these days.
Yeah, it certainly is, and it's so incredible, as you mentioned, to see the similarities between then and now in the precautions that we're taking. Obviously, modern medicine, much different, although in this case, health officials say the real way to get back to where we were is by having a vaccine for COVID-19. And 100 years ago, vaccinations weren't that prevalent, becoming such a new thing then. For you, do you think that's one of the big reasons why it was so common to have an outbreak of something and people go, okay, this is just kind of how it is, because there was no official medical way to fight against it otherwise than social distancing and staying apart?
Yeah, I think you could definitely see that. I mean, looking at these sources again, there's some very similar language. That there's the idea that maybe the correct germ hadn't been isolated at that point. So that's definitely a difference now, that we know that as soon as the coronavirus started spreading, we had not only identified what was causing it, but had done a full genetic breakdown of it within just a week or two of the infection starting. Whereas when you look at the 1918 pandemic, a year on from it, they still weren't sure if they had actually identified the correct cause of the disease. And they also have a thing in here, which is, again, something that is recurring now, that in their opinion, one of the better ways to stop the pandemic is to bring, what we would call now herd immunity. You can say here, previous attack brings immunity in percentage of cases. So while they enforced sanitation and avoidance, they also recognized that, for them, just letting it spread through the population and hoping that people survived and hoping that people developed immunity was kind of the solution they had in their toolbox at that point.
Yeah, and I know that the health experts have talked about how it's almost like we were sort of due for some sort of unfortunate pandemic because of the 100-year similarity between, in that case, 1919 and now 2020, which, if you look at COVID-19, really did start in 2019, just not here in the Western Hemisphere necessarily. Although you talk to some people and they say, well, I was that sick back in December, so you really don't know what has happened. And I've talked to doctors who, because it's so new, they're still confused about the antibody testing, because it's like, well, you could have that, and different discussion for a different day. But when you look at the long gap between now and then, I'd imagine that's probably associated to modern medicine, and now we just hit a strand that is much different than what we're used to seeing.
Yeah, I think part of it too is just, in a weird way, a luck component, that it's unpredictable when you're dealing with these viruses, and especially with these ones that jump from an animal population to a human population, when exactly that genetic mutation is going to occur, when the circumstances are going to be right for it to make that jump from the animal host to the human host, as seems to be the case in this pandemic. And it's a lot of variables, a lot of different factors that have to come together in kind of just the right or maybe just the wrong moment to kick things off. So, I mean, predictive modeling, I think, only takes us so far when it comes to saying when a pandemic, should occur.
Now, from what the research that you've done and looked at, Noah, have you seen any articles about possibly reopening and what that looked like, and whether we're sort of doing it differently now in today's world rather than then, or did they not have as much government intervention?
From what I've seen, there were a couple factors with that. One, of course, is that they didn't have the option to do work from home, digital call-ins, Zoom recordings, that kind of thing. So there was much more of a push for people to be out working because they didn't really have any other choice. The other complicating factor with that is World War I, of course, was happening sort of simultaneously with the outbreak of the pandemic. And I found articles that really made things kind of significantly worse, not only because there were soldiers returning who were infected or people that were infected while they were serving in Europe, but also people with needed skill sets like doctors and healthcare workers felt that it was their patriotic duty to sign up for World War I. So they were signing up and going over to Europe. And meanwhile, the health departments back home, I have a newspaper article here from Buffalo saying that the flu pandemic was significantly worse in Western New York because the health departments here were so understaffed, and so many of those vital workers had gone over to fight in the war effort. So, I think that societal circumstances definitely had a greater pressure in getting people working and getting people serving their country during the 1918 pandemic than are present right now. We don't have that same urgency. We don't have a world war going on, and we do have more tools that allow us to stay isolated from each other. Painful as that can be when you start talking about 3 or 4 months of staying isolated, but we have better solutions, I would say, than they had back then.
Yeah, certainly, and I know we're using one of those services now to chat with each other here live, where otherwise, if we wanted to have a conversation, we'd have to be in person, or we could write each other. And certainly today's world, I think companies are seeing the change in technology, and with going forward until we have a vaccine, a lot of places already have said, I'm going to remain at a limited capacity. I know that so-and-so can work from home and things like that. Was there a big long-term impact from that outbreak? And does it compare to today? Or do you think that once sort of things died down, it seems like the world just went back to the way it was?
From what I can see, looking at the historical record, it seems like people were scared longer, which is kind of a weird thing to say. But it seems like in the U.S. now, there are a lot of people who are, even though the coronavirus is still increasing in some states, there are people who are ready to move on and ready to just say, I'm done with this and I don't want to wear the mask anymore. And you didn't really see that as much in 1918. There were definitely some people that were that way, but by and large, it seemed more like people wore the masks longer, and that may have been reflective of the uncertainty regarding the medical science of those days. They didn't know if they'd found the right cause. They didn't know when it had been eradicated. They didn't really have the contact tracing or the antibody testing or any of the modern tools that we have available to us. So you tended to see people being more cognizant of the pandemic for a longer period of time. A lot of these articles that I'm finding are from 1919, so well over a year after the pandemic had really started to spread and make itself known, the 1918 Spanish flu pandemic, that is. And still people are very shaken up by it. One thing that is noted in that article from Buffalo is that contrary to what happens in a lot of kind of wartime scenarios, and certainly what we happened after World War II, is that there weren't many war babies, as they call it. There wasn't really an increase in, the production of children after the war, partly because of this pandemic. That people were scared of the soldiers who were coming back, and unfortunately, some of the people who did come back, or some of the people who were over there serving, didn't come back because of this pandemic, and it led to a smaller effect in terms of like a baby boom sort of thing. So societally, I think you definitely see some longer term repercussions there in terms of people's perceptions, and it definitely affected the way that people were treating each other in that time period.
Yeah, certainly. Another big change that we're just seeing unfold really here in the last few weeks was following the killing of George Floyd and the subsequent outcry nationally calling on law enforcement reform. Here in Jamestown, we've seen some of the protests and dialogues with local leaders. Have we seen movements like this here locally? Or is this the first time that we've really have seen people take to the streets and say, I'm demanding change?
From what I can tell, this is a pretty unprecedented moment for Jamestown, particularly when it comes to advocating for the rights of our Black population and for minority communities. There have obviously been protests in the past for one thing or another, or kind of celebrations of different ethnic pride, Italian pride, Greek pride, that sort of thing. But I don't think we've seen any kind of sustained protest process like this in the past. One thing that it might have some resonance in this area and some parallel structure is the women's suffrage movement, which was very, very heated and very, very, I guess, popular is the word in this area. We had a lot of very prominent suffragists come out of Western New York, specifically out of Jamestown, and a lot of women's suffrage activity. So when you would want to talk about people demanding rights and people going on protest marches, I would say that's the closest parallel from Western New York's history. But I don't think that there's been anything along the lines of like the Black Lives Matter movement here in Jamestown, at least not at the scale that we're seeing now.
Yeah, and I think when you look at it nationally too, the conversation has been at the forefront for quite some time. Unfortunately, it seems like we would have some sort of officer-involved violence towards an African American, and then we would have protests, some of them turning violent, and then it would slip away from what relatively new we see with the 24-hour news cycle now. And I think social media almost is keeping that on the forefront. It's no longer what's on your 5 o'clock news. It's really what the community wants to be in the conversation. These people go out, they can film themselves on a live platform. They don't even really need the news media anymore to talk about it. You can keep the conversation going yourself. Here in Jamestown, we've seen that, unlike other places nationwide, the mayor, police chiefs, they've all come down and they've talked to people. As a perspective across the whole nation, is that as rare as I think it is?
From what I've seen across the nation, there have been selected moments where police officers or political officials have come out in support. I mean, you look at Minneapolis, where the city council has chosen to go down a road of alternative policing structure. And I know there have been other moments that have been shared widely on Twitter, but I can't say that I've seen anywhere where we had the same responses we did in Jamestown with that first protest, where, like you said, the mayor came down, the chief of police was there, several police officers were there, the sheriff was there, members of city council were there. It was a really impressive display, I would say, for our local community to have that kind of representation. And I know those individuals haven't been at every protest, but I know that there has been some representation at almost every protest that has gone on in our local area. And that's awesome. It's amazing to see. I just saw posted on Facebook just within the last few minutes that the Justice Coalition has met with the head of the police union to talk about ways that they're address community policing and making people feel safer with community policing. Seeing that kind of dialogue, I think, is really impressive, and I hope it continues.
Yeah, and I think you're right in the sense where it's now is the time, and this is something that I don't even know if we can look back on it because it's happening right now in the midst of us here in Jamestown. So Noah Goodling, the director of the Fenton History Center, joining us today. Sir, thank you for your time and your historical perspective on all of this. Certainly the world has changed, and we'll continue to see where it goes going forward. I appreciate you talking to us.
Absolutely. Do I have time to do a couple quick plugs here?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Okay, so on our website, which is fentonhistorycenter.org, we have 2 Google Doc documents up right now. One of them is for chronicling the coronavirus pandemic in our local area. Just a short questionnaire asking what your experience has been like, how it's affected you. We want to make sure that we get that into the historical record, so please go and fill that out. And then the other one is related to our LGBT activity, or exhibit, which will be upcoming in 2021. And we are also collecting stories from LGBT community members, again, looking to get a representative, experiential look at what it looks like to be part of the LGBT community within this area. So if either one of those applies to you, please go to our website and check out our Google Docs and fill those out. Help us get the story on the ground right now. Thank you.
Yeah, that's absolutely amazing. And actually, Noah, if you can, stay with us because I'll talk to you a little bit more about that, and we'll get some links up for people to be able to direct to as well. Thank you for your time. Let's now get a check of our weather with Dakota.
Well, you know, if you were out to the east, mainly in Cattaraugus and Allegheny counties, you got a deluge. Look at Olean at the airport, 1.3 inches of rain yesterday. Wellsville, close to 2 inches of rain. So you can see where the heavier amounts of rain set up yesterday. And we have a few patches of heavier rain now. This is the rain band that moved basically through downtown Jamestown. It's now north of downtown, moving basically through, the northern part of the city. Now, here's our next batch of heavier rain. That's up to the north near Cassadaga and 62. This is all moving to the north and northeast today. So again, we're going to be in, that's the first line of showers moving through. This is the next line of showers. Notice all those lightning strikes. That is the chance for our thunderstorms later this afternoon. So that is our next big thing. So the NOAA Storm Prediction Center has reissued, they don't really reissue things, but they have put us under a low-end marginal risk once again for all of Western New York and Northwestern Pennsylvania, a level 1 out of 5. And again, you can see our main threat here will be strong damaging winds like it was yesterday. Let's time it out. There's our first band of rain, moves out to the east. Here comes the second band where you see those darker colors. That starts to indicate the heavier amounts of rainfall, and that'll be the thunderstorm potential. That moves out later tonight, a few showers overnight tonight. Tomorrow should be mainly dry, but we will see a few scattered showers through the day tomorrow, and then high pressure actually starts to build in, so that means cooler air and less humid. Thank goodness. But it's not going to last. As we look into the first week of July, it's going to be hotter than a firecracker here. As we get into the first week of July, it looks like a big ridge is going to set up with the jet stream pulling north, allowing for warm, moist southern air to start infiltrating the northeast. So as we head into July, it looks like it's going to be a hot and muggy start to the next month. Zone forecast, Lake Erie shoreline today, lower 80s here, developing showers west to east. Lake Erie water temperature up to 68 degrees. Inland areas here, maybe Warren and Tiddiyute, maybe mid to upper 80s here. Everybody else lower 80s with showers and thunderstorms through the afternoon. Next 7 days of your life coming up on the screen right now. 72 tomorrow, 74 on Thursday. Both days, chance for just a few scattered showers and storms. And it's also cooler and less humid as well. Now Friday, we return to 80 degrees. Then we go back into the humidity once again for next weekend. Showers and thunderstorms likely throughout both days, but I don't think either day is a total washout. And then just another hot and humid day coming up next Monday. Temperatures into the lower 80s at that point. Justin?
All right, Dakota, thank you. Well, we leave you with this. Jamestown High School students received more than $1.2 million in scholarships and awards at the recent 2020 award celebration. School officials tell us more than 200 students were honored with those scholarships and financial awards or inducted into the National Honor Society for their academic achievements. Students were honored in sciences, arts, athletics, technology, and literature, as well as many receiving memorial scholarships. Certainly, congratulations to all of them there. Well, that's going to do it for us today. Of course, news continues 24/7 at WNYNewsNow.com. We're back here tomorrow. I hope to see you then.